In this video, I will discuss autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease. It is the most common inherited cystic kidney disease and it is inherited as an autosomal dominant disorder. It is characterized by progressive development of multiple bilateral cysts. These cysts are mainly present in the kidneys but can also be present in the liver, spleen and pancreas. So these cysts can be present in the liver, spleen and pancreas. So the kidneys on examination are enlarged and these can be palpable. The patient develop hypertension. Hypertension is due to ischemia that is induced by the cyst and it leads to RAS, renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system activation. It leads to hypertension in case of polycystic kidney disease and therefore SNA or ARBs are useful in this type of hypertension. Then these patients often have complaints of hematuria. It can be due to infection or it can be due to cyst rupture which leads to hematuria. Then recurrent cyst infections and other complications like stone formation can occur. Then it can lead to progressive kidney disease if it is type 1. Type 1, it leads to progressive kidney disease in age of after 40 to 50. While if it is type 2, then it can lead to progressive CKD in age of 60 to 70. It can lead to chronic kidney disease and even ESKD. Important extrarenal manifestations are presence of cysts in the liver and also intracranial aneurysms. So these intracranial aneurysms can lead to subarachnoid hemorrhage. Now we will discuss genetics. Actually, there is a gene known as PKD1 that is present on chromosome number 16. One is present on chromosome number 16 and it is more common and more severe, presents earlier. In age of 40 to 50, patient develops ESKD and stage kidney disease. While PKD2 or polycystic kidney disease 2 is present on the chromosome number 4 and it is usually mild and it develops kidney failure but in age of more than 70. So it presents later. It is an autosomal dominant inheritance and new mutations can occur and even sporadic cases of autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease can be seen. What is the pathophysiology? Actually, when there is mutation in these PKD1 and PKD2 genes, then it leads to abnormal polycystin function of the polycystin protein, leading to increased tubular epithelial proliferation and fluid secretion. When there is increased epithelial tubular proliferation and fluid secretion, it leads to formation of the cysts, especially in the kidneys, but also in the liver, spleen and pancreas. These cysts progressively enlarge under the influence of vasopressin. So vasopressin receptor antagonists are useful in controlling the size of these cysts. So these cysts progressively enlarge under the influence of vasopressin and it leads to renal parenchymal compression by the cysts. This renal parenchymal compression by the cysts lead to nephron loss and even end-stage kidney disease. So what are the renal manifestations of this disorder? Patient develops hypertension. As I have told you, it is due to cyst-induced ischemia leading to RAS activation. Then flank and abdominal pain, hematuria. It may be due to infections or due to cyst rupture. Then these patients may have mild proteinuria, subnephrotic range proteinuria. These patients develop recurrent urinary tract infections because of cyst infections and even nephrolithiasis. Calcium oxalate stones are present in the kidneys. Then cyst hemorrhage or infection which leads to hematuria and progressive renal enlargement can be seen and it can be examined on the abdominal examination. The kidneys are palpable when there is enlargement of the kidneys due to cysts and even end-stage kidney disease can develop in these patients. Physical examination. On physical examination, when you examine the abdomen, you will feel the enlarged bilateral palpable kidneys, and on checking the blood pressure you will see that these patients have hypertension in most of the cases. And sometimes when there is cyst infection, then there may be tenderness in the abdomen. What are the complications that can arise? So first of all, we discuss other extrarenal manifestations of this ADPKD. The extrarenal manifestations are hepatic cysts that can be seen on the ultrasound, intracranial aneurysms. Intracranial aneurysms are when present, then there is increased risk of subarachnoid hemorrhage, especially the patients who have hypertension. So CT angiography in these patients or MR angiography in these patients should be done, and if there are aneurysms, then they should be clipped. Then cardiac manifestations are mitral valve prolapse and aortic regurgitation can be seen in these patients. Then vascular problems that can arise in ADPKD are aortic root dilatation and aneurysm and dissection. Then these patients can develop abdominal hernias and inguinal hernias. Other cysts that can be seen in the body are in the pancreas, spleen, and in the seminal vesicle. These are seminal vesicle cysts. Now, how will you diagnose this condition? It is diagnosed on the basis of genetics and also on the basis of renal ultrasonography. If the patient has positive family history, then you can diagnose this condition on the basis of ultrasonography. If no family history, then you cannot diagnose only on the basis of ultrasonography. So ultrasonography is the initial standard investigation, and if the age is less than 30, then two cysts collectively on both sides or more are significant. If the age is 30 to 60, then two cysts on each side, that is total four cysts or more if are present, then it is significant. And if the age is more than 60, then at least four cysts on each side of the kidneys are significant. Then family history should be important for the diagnostic criteria of ultrasound. CT and MRI more sensitive when ultrasound is inconclusive, it is obvious, and genetic testing may be useful when diagnosis is uncertain, and particularly it is done in the potential kidney donors who are donating the kidneys to the patients who have end stage kidney disease. So how will you assess and monitor these patients? First of all, you should monitor the patient's blood pressure. Then you should do RFTs. RFTs means serum creatinine and urea. Serum creatinine may be elevated, and then check for EGFR that this patient has developed CKD and what is the stage of that CKD. Then urine analysis, because these patients may have hematuria, and check for proteinuria. Then check for the kidney sizes and total kidney volume when assessing progression, and it is done by ultrasonography, and even CT scan can be done for this purpose. But ultrasonography is the standard for measuring the size of the kidney. Then these patients have cardiovascular risk factors like aortic aneurysm formation and aortic regurgitation. So these patients should be having echocardiogram so that these risk factors should be ruled out. And extrarenal complications should be ruled out like subarachnoid hemorrhage. If the patient has family history of subarachnoid hemorrhage, then you should go for CT angiography or MR angiography. How will you manage these patients? First of all, if these patients have hypertension, then control BP by ACE inhibitors or ARBs. Then these patients require adequate hydration because these patients are at the risk of stone formation in the kidneys. Stone formation in the kidneys. So avoid dehydration. These patients should be hydrated. Avoid nephrotoxic drugs, particularly when there is use of NSAIDs. And these patients recurrently develop urinary tract infections, so these UTIs should be treated promptly. If these patients develop nephrolithiasis, then this nephrolithiasis should be treated promptly. Then these patients are advised to restrict the salt, restrict sodium intake to less than 2 gram per day, because these patients can develop hypertension due to hypernatremia. And smoking cessation and regular physical activity is also advised. These are the general measures. Now we will discuss about disease modifying therapy, that is important. The disease modifying therapy that is FDA approved is Tolvaptan. This Tolvaptan is a vasopressin 2 receptor antagonist, and when it is given, then it reduces the cyclic AMP mediated cyst growth, and as a result it reduces the growth of the cyst in the polycystic kidney disease, and therefore can slow the decline in the function of the kidneys. If you cannot give this vasopressin, then ask the patient to increase the intake of water. This increased intake of water does same to the vasopressin, therefore antagonizing the secretion of vasopressin, leading to decline in the kidney function and also decline in the growth of the cysts. So this is all about polycystic kidney disease.